Okay, it's 10:30. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Holly, if you could please take a roll call.
Okay. Trace Pendig. Patrick Updike.
Present.
Peter Huffman.
Here.
Cindy Hike.
Here.
Tom Lampy.
Here.
Blake DeRucci.
Here.
Annette Dunn. Wendy Hess. Andy Buffington. Was Andy on? Michelle Bischoff.
Here.
David Ness.
Here.
Rob Rother.
Here.
Jason Schlutenhofer.
He called me. He will not be on.
Okay. And Angela Klauser. And we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Introduction of board members, starting with, is Blake on this morning?
I am, yeah. Blake DeRucci, Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management.
Okay. Andy? Angela? Sheriff Rotter? Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Sorry,
I'm just going off the agenda on the side, so it's a little more easier. Otherwise, people interrupt each other, and so I'm down to Sheriff Rotter if you're on.
Yeah. Sheriff Rotter, Iowa County Sheriff's Office, representing sheriffs.
Okay, Michelle Bischoff.
Yes, Michelle Bischoff, Des Moines Fire, representing professional fire chiefs.
Tom Lampy is representing DPS. David Ness.
Municipal Police from Des Moines.
Wendy Heiss.
Wendy Hess,
Yes.
Gray County Communications, representing communication centers.
Cindy.
Cindy Hike with the Iowa Department of Public Health.
Peter Huffman.
Peter Huffman, Iowa Department of Transportation.
Trace Kennig. Patrick Updike.
Patrick Updike, Iowa Department of Corrections.
Nat Dunn. Okay, welcome everybody. Looking for a motion to approve today's agenda. If I could get that, please.
So moved, Bischoff.
Bischoff, second.
Second, Peter.
Peter's second. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Looking for the approval of the meeting minutes from May 14th, 2020. Get a motion for that, please.
Yes, so moved.
Ness is first. Do you have a second?
Second. Peter.
Who is that?
This is Peter. I'll second it.
I think that was Peter.
Yes.
Okay, Peter's a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, hearing none, motion passes. Quick report.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for awareness, too, I saw that Andy Buffington signed in after the initial roll call, so he will be here, too, for later on in the agenda. Quick update for the board on status board. It is running. It's been stable, and so far we have 60 plus agencies and over 400 accounts associated with those agencies on status board. So far, we're nearing 60% of all PSAPs having access to it so far. The ones that don't just haven't had a chance to get in touch with me yet to set up accounts. We've done several trainings on this as well with PSAPs. Most recently, we did one with Pella PD the other day, and it has been working pretty well. It got a lot of use during the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we were reserving talk groups within each region for COVID response. For those of you that have access to Status Board already, you may notice that some of those reservations have been let to expire. If you do have some drive-through testing pop up in your area and you do need a talk group for communications and interoperability during that drive-through testing, you can go ahead and grab the 6th TAC in each region for your local stuff there. So we will have a reservation coming up on TAC 16 on Monday for some drive-through testing in the Des Moines area. That reservation will pop up for everybody to see at around midnight on Monday. So that's Status Board so far. We're working on some final touch-ups with that, just to let everybody know that we will be updating some of the tabs that people see over the next several weeks. We got some user feedback from a county that said, you know, hey, it'd be nice if all these things were alphabetized with respect to the regionals and statewide so that they were lumped together. So we're going to go ahead and start making those changes. The new tabs will show up as IOP and then SW for statewide, or IOP, R1, R2, R3, R4 for the various regions. And that'll help cluster them together so it's a little bit easier for dispatchers to access. An email will go out to people that already have accounts on Status Board tomorrow to let them know that change is coming. And from there, you'll see those tabs show up. We do have to assign those one by one to each agency. So we're going to assign those tabs to each agency's profile first. They will be empty early on, but then over time, those interop talk groups will be moved into those new tabs. And then when all that the transition is complete, we will take down the legacy tabs so that they disappear from the profile. So that change is coming with Status Board, and that is a user-based request. We've been able to accommodate it, and it makes sense. So we're going to go ahead and roll that out. Expecting about 6 weeks to get all that done, worst case scenario. It may go by quicker, but a lot of that time period is going to be devoted to making sure that end users know and getting some training updated for the new tabs as well. So on to some P25 work. Chair Lampe and I have a P25 steering committee this afternoon. There's not any standards to approve since TIA and TR8 did not meet in June because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but the P25 steering committee is going to do some more work on education and outreach products with respect to P25 for public safety stakeholders. So that'll be this afternoon, and I'll give a report on how that went next month. The Shared System Study Group, that's one thing that's taken up a lot of time recently also. We last met on Monday, the 18th. We had Scott Wright from the state of Connecticut share his experiences with the ISSI with the group. Connecticut, their system structure is very similar to ours. It's a Motorola-based infrastructure, P25 Phase 2. They have been working on ISSI connections for almost 3 to 4 years now. So far, they still have yet to get their L3 Harris connection with New York MTA off the ground to their system. There's still some things that don't work with that. They've had some luck with some Motorola to Motorola connections and even Motorola to EF Johnson, but they have not yet been able to get that Motorola to Harris connection off the ground. So we do have another meeting scheduled for June 30th. That one is going to be done virtually, most likely. I don't think we'll be able to meet in person yet because where we had decided that we wanted to go would be possibly not open yet. But we're going to have some of the P25 standards experts jump on from both Motorola and L3 Harris to kind of talk about what an ISSI actually does with P25 standards and which standards apply to it. Have they implemented those standards, and are there some discrepancies that people need to be aware of? So that's a very brief update on that. I actually may have got ahead of the agenda a little bit. But anyways, we also have done some one-on-one training sessions. You heard me report out a couple months ago about a couple of training sessions with Mills County. We also did a most recent one with Pella PD for Status Board. So aside from that, that's the bulk of some of the stuff that I've been working on this past month. I've been helping some agencies get connected to Isicsb and get some trainings lined up for them as well. I'll have more coming on a little bit later on the agenda, Mr. Chair, so I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Any more questions for Chris? Okay, 911 council report.
All right, thank you. Not a lot to report today. An update on the wireline migration onto the next generation network. Of course, we have been in kind of a holding pattern for the last month and a half or so. We do have the first PSAP up and rescheduled, scheduled again to June 29th with additional PSAPs, hoping to get dates on the calendar shortly after the July 4th holiday. So just waiting for some third-party infrastructure to be in place to be able to make those conversions and put those wireline calls onto the next generation network. In addition to that, really just spent a little bit of time talking through changes in the upcoming fiscal year to the GIS grant program, as well as the training funds that are available through the 911 program. So those are discussed during the 911 council meeting and will be sent out to PSAPs the beginning of next week, as well as updated on our website. That is all I have, pending any questions.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the Isicsb User Group Committee. Chair Buffington, if you're on.
Yeah, hopefully everybody can hear me. The User Group Committee met 3 weeks ago on Thursday following the meeting, a week following the meeting. Standard business, you'll see in the new business, we have 2 applications to consider. I'd also like to reach out to any of the board members that have the bandwidth and the desire that I will be stepping away from the chair just due to job obligations and things like that. So with that, I have nothing further. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Finance. Mr. Myers, you take care of that today?
Yes, I can take care of it, Mr. Chair. So the financial report for this month of May, the Interoperable and Broadband Communications Fund were $6,084. The May ending balance for that fund was $137,728. Monthly expenditures during May for SLIGP 2.0 were $13,134. Of that amount, $10,507 were federal expenditures, and the remaining federal amount available from the grant is $315,819. Does the board have any questions regarding the activities or financial positions of the Interoperable and Broadband Communications Fund or SLIGP 2.0?
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to governance. Chair Huffman.
Good morning. The Governance Committee met on the 1st. We discussed the sub-regional interoperability talk groups standard proposition for a pilot project that allows sub-regional interoperable talk groups to be formed according to a standard sort of response to learning and growing. So many barriers of communication have been removed that we found that there was a lot of things people didn't hear, and I guess you might call it chatter, so to speak, or peripheral noise. And so trying to deal with that as we learn and grow, I think the standard seemed to be a good step towards that. We didn't find any issues with it in terms of interfering with other standards and governance issues. So after a few modifications to the language that were recommended, it was sent back to the operations committee. And that was the only business we dealt with. Are there any questions?
Hey, Peter, this is Chris. I believe we had a discussion on the status board standard also.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm sorry. There was a discussion on the status board. Also, some modifications to the language were recommended, but it was favorably and advanced. Any other questions or comments?
Pretty quiet today. Operations. Chair Bishop.
Yes, the Operations Committee met. We continued conversation on the sub-regional policy we'll discuss further in new business. And we also discussed the alert tone standard coming out of the Standards Committee, reviewed that and discussed it as well. Are there any questions for me? Thank you.
Outreach.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I can handle that. So been working with Holly recently on trying to get some of our regional trainings rescheduled. We had one scheduled for June for Ida Grove, but that obviously was not going to work. So we're working on finding an alternative date. And I think we have that tentatively set for the end of July. And then once we have that lined up, we'll probably look towards getting Region 1 established within a month or two after that. Those two sessions will be the Isicsb Consulate Control Station training, along with FirstNet outreach and updates. And then following that, we plan on doing another round of status board training as well. For those other regions that have not previously had regional training for status board, we will be working on lining those up as well. So this is in addition to some one-on-one stuff. And of course, the new newsletter has been put out now for the second month in a row. I would encourage anybody that, as Holly reaches out to, if you've got something that you want to have included in that newsletter, to let her know. I'll pass it back to you, Mr. Chair. Take questions.
Okay, thank you. You might as well keep going. If you're on training, are you going to handle that this morning?
Yeah, I got that too. So as you all are aware, we had to postpone basically all of our TAs due to COVID. Over the past month, I've had some discussions with ICTAP on seeing what it would take to get some of those TAs delivered. With respect to the encryption TA, that's something we can do virtually for the most part. We'll lose a little bit of hands-on stuff, but it may not be terribly detrimental. We also will likely be able to do the SOP planning and development TA for September. So we're going to probably start working on the planning aspects of getting that back up and going. We do have that old registration list from those that wanted to take it in March before COVID broke out. So we could very easily just reach out to those individuals that signed up for that and let them know of the new date. Doubling back to the encryption one, that's looking like it's still going to be potentially 2 webinars. One for decision makers so that they fully have a concept and an understanding of what encryption actually does and what some of the goals are of it and how they can implement it but still prevent issues with interoperability. Encryption and interoperability are not always mutually exclusive, and in the past they've tended to preclude that, but with proper planning you can still allow those interoperable doors to exist. The second webinar would be for the very technically savvy of us. Think of your system technicians that you may have, those that may do programming within your locales. This would be geared towards them. Also, a training session that's coming up June 25th, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning. We will be virtually hosting a alternative PSAP facilities planning webinar that's done in conjunction with ICTAP, and HSEMD and DPS have also helped out in getting that set up. But this is basically a course that was organically created at the start of the pandemic because it was brought to our attention that, hey, we may have some PSAPs out there that have not had a chance to update continuity of operation plans. So this course is geared towards that. I think that course is typically a multiple day course. And in this one here that we're having, we'll also introduce some basic tenets of tactical dispatching. So we're taking about, 6 or 7 days worth of course material and condensing it down into about 4 hours and putting it at about the 15 to 20,000 foot level for those that are attending. the goal for those that are attending is so that they can at least get a sense of what questions they would need to ask themselves as far as plans, agreements, personnel that they may need to outline for their plans, and then also what questions to ask their vendors to make sure that they've got the technology and capabilities if they do have to go to an alternative facility to get that done and get it done effectively. As of this morning, we have 32 registered attendees. We can handle over 100 plus online registrations with this. So it's not like we're going to be limited as far as how many can attend. So I would encourage to everybody on the board and that may be in attendance today to reach out to the people that run the PSAPs in their area and encourage slide deck look very informative. Report from the training committee. I will pass it back to you, Mr. Chair, and take any questions.
Okay, you don't hear any questions. We'll move on to technology chair update.
Yeah, well, my apologies. This is going to be real short just because I've had multiple projects going on here at the facility in Clarinda, such as a fire alarm replacement project and a telephone replacement project. We have not been able to meet, coupled with the fact that there's been so many other things going on out there that we just weren't able to meet. So hopefully next month we can kind of pick things up and keep moving forward. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, FirstNet Broadband Committee, Chair Bischoff, back to you.
Yes, we were able to meet on Tuesday this week. We had a report that the real crux to the meeting, aside from our standard updates, was meeting with Andy Sackrider and getting an update for the build out and having the opportunity to ask Andy some probing questions and get answers to that, which the committee found very beneficial to be able to better advise our agencies and better answer questions at a local level. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Okay, Leah Committee, Chair Stufflebeam or Sheriff Rotter, you want to jump in here?
I'm here. This is Connie. Last month we did not have a meeting due to some conflicts that were going on, but we have continued to provide the LEA announcements on the LEA channels, and we continue to gather the utilization reports for the tower usage for LEA, along with the training and the control station installations. All this data will be discussed next Tuesday at our monthly June meeting. Are there any questions? Or Sheriff Rotter, do you have anything to add? Are there any questions from anyone else?
Okay. We'll move on to other reports, information sharing. If there's any board members like to share any information amongst the board members, now's the time. Okay, as always, I have something for the group. I talked to you about the mobile command last board meeting about how we are trying to integrate the LTE for the connection to the core. I want to report that has been successful. We worked with Caltech and Motorola engineers, and we now have a mobile command that uses LTE for the connection to the core. So what that means is when you pull out the mobile command, that site will come up as, I believe it's site 18. It'll show up. And so what your radio will see is just another Isicsb site to roam to instead of being a trunking only site. So that'll be very beneficial for an area, not only to take the load off some other sites, but to fill in a hole somewhere where we don't have coverage for an incident. So it all depends on the cell signal strength, but there is 2 different carriers in the Cradle Point modem. So if one carrier isn't getting the coverage that it needs for the area, the other chip carrier for the SIM card will try to grab the signal. And if there's no signal for either coverage, either service provider, then we're back to using the over-the-air consulates that are in there, which is fine. So that's good news. When I did say, when we did get that completed, the board maybe needs to think about purchasing a Cradle Point router and getting service and kind of mimic what the mobile command is for the STR trailer, where we have the 6-pack trunking system in the trailer, which is only site trunking right now. So we proved that it can work. I think maybe the next step is to assign it maybe to the committee, operations committee, or whoever wants to do it. The concept of placing a Cradle Point inside of the STR to make it also a wide area site when it gets deployed. I'll take any questions if anybody has anything on that.
Chair Lambie?
Yeah.
This is Michelle. Would a more appropriate committee assignment be to technology? It seems like a technology to me over an operation.
Yeah, sure. You just popped in my head because you're so busy.
Yeah, I'm trying to be Teflon and deflect.
Yeah, well, you're doing a good job of it. Yep, you bet. So, yeah, Patrick, what do you think? Okay, we discussed that. That's just a report. We can get into that later.
We can hash it out.
Yeah, but it's pretty cool. It does work, and it's the next step is to get another Cradle Point router inside of there and get the dispatch console, the MCC 7500 dispatch console, connected to the core. They're going to be working on that in the next few weeks, so that'll be the next step for the piece for a dispatch, to a full dispatch. And with Blake's assistance, we're getting some 911 equipment in there to be able to take a 911 call into the mobile command through the LTE. So it should be a fully functional rig here soon, but it was a huge step. I think to get them to figure out how to get that LTE to work was a big deal for them. So they're pretty proud of it. So that's all I have. Anybody else?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chris.
Yeah.
One thing, I want to extend a thank you to some agencies here. We had some potential protests in various parts of the state over the last couple of weeks, and there were some questions on communications plans, and we had some local agencies step up and offer assistance to that local agency with their comms plan. So I do want to extend some gratitude to Dallas County, City of Des Moines, Worth County, and Wright County for offering assistance to help out and provide some equipment for public safety personnel in those areas. Wanted to let you guys know that your willingness to help was certainly appreciated and went a long way. So again, thank you to those that assisted with that.
All right. Is our project manager, Motorola rep, Melvin, are you on?
I am.
Okay, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, so the focus has been to try to wrap up everything so we can close out the project. Right now, we've been doing site walks. That kind of slowed down for a little bit, but we've been stacking them up again. So this week we had site walks. Last week we had site walks, so we're doing them on a weekly basis. Right now we're on average about 4 a day, but we're going to try to stack that up so we can do at least twice as much. Beyond that, the big focus also is Rock Rapids. So the Rock Rapids Tower site is built. The entire tower is up. The old tower has been torn down and decommissioned. All the fencing has been completed, so the site itself is done. And so this week we had, between last week and this week, we had the microwave crew hanging up the dishes. The winds have been, made it somewhat challenging, but we're on a good path to completing that. And then we're looking at completing that aspect of it at the end of this week so that we can start optimizing next week. Once we complete the optimization, then we're going to start the process of coverage testing, line counties, and Sioux. And we're estimating about 2 weeks to get that done. So our target is to complete and close out the project by the end of July. Any questions?
All right, thanks, Melvin.
No problem.
Okay, is our AT&T rep, Dave Barnett, are you on today?
Hey, Mr. Chair. David was not able to make it today. I do have his report, though.
Okay.
David was going to report today that there are 2 new sites that came online since our last meeting. One was in downtown Des Moines, and one was in Audubon. Those are Band 14 and LTE HD Voice, and they are now live and broadcasting. That's the report.
Okay. Is Jim Lundstedt on today?
Yes, sir, I am. Is the audio okay, Tom?
Yes.
Okay. From Isicsb, just have a couple of quick things to update you on. The first is we have been sharing hopefully timely information about concerns not only about threats to the build out of 5G infrastructure, but calling for increased vigilance about protecting telecommunications assets that are both private and public safety critical infrastructure that support our traditional LMR systems. There's a lot of interest right now in primarily Europe, but concerns about health issues related to 5G that are largely considered a little more than a conspiracy theory, but we are trying to keep people up to date on that. We've also been sharing information on threats to public safety communications when vetted and as applicable. So hopefully the information that we're getting you is timely and of somewhat of value. Talking about threats to public safety communications, there is not a day that goes by right now that we don't have a handful of public safety agencies that are victimized by ransomware or denial of service attacks. Specifically speaking to ransomware, I want to make you aware that still the best guidance is that most threats get into our systems through malicious content in electronic mail systems. And awareness and policies about how you utilize email in your public safety agency are one of your best defenses. The second is that one of the best antidotes for a ransomware attack is, of course, a full, useful backup that is not stored on your network. Unfortunately, the current variants tend to encrypt everything on your network, not just your workstations. And for those who store their backups on the same system, those sometimes fall victim as well. Finally, just a reminder that our position, CISA, I don't want to overstate anything about our relationship with trying to help public safety and public agencies on ransomware. We are awareness, training, and our hunt and incident response teams sometimes do get involved, but we are not a primary law enforcement response agency. We urge you to work with FBI, your state fusion center, your local law enforcement agency, and then secondarily with us as we try to understand and educate others about vulnerabilities that are discovered in the processes. Last thing I'll bring up is that we have seen a tremendous growth in the demand for GETS and wireless priority service. The current call completion rate since March 12th, when we began really deeply tracking, suggests that GETS utilization has gone up quite a bit because of network congestion, trying to call into online meetings and online briefings as we begin more virtual work. GETS call completion has been over 99.3%, and even wireless priority, where the most congestion has been noted nationwide, and I won't specifically call out Iowa as a victim state. We haven't seen a trend there, but where we have experienced blocking in the wireless network, WPS call completion success rates have exceeded 97%. We've added over 70,000 users in this period of time, and our contractor who manages and monitors network activity says we're well within the norms for performance, so people should not be concerned about using GETS or WPS when needed, including routine use where you have congestion in a network at this time. That's my report for today, sir. Standing any questions?
Hey, Jim, this is Brad Button from Des Moines PD. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, have you guys seen an uptick in denial of service attempts on phone lines at all? About 4 days ago, we started getting some on our admin lines, and we've been able to block them at the city level, but have you guys seen an uptick with the civil unrest here in the last week or so?
Yes, and we shared a product on that, but yes, telephone denial of service, distributed denial of service, doxing, and attempts to subvert or redirect web traffic with public safety agencies has been on the rise. And we do have a document on TDOS. Not sure that it would necessarily help you since you're blocking it internally, but that is shareable with you. Chris, if you wouldn't mind sharing the latest version we sent out.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right, thank you.
You're most welcome. And that is a very common attack against your admin lines. It's difficult to get to camera trunks or closed networks for voice, but yes, we've seen that, as well as some intentional, willful, purposeful, I can't think of stronger words, interference with conventional law enforcement communications over the last couple of weeks as well.
Okay. Yeah, we've had about 40,000 attempts, phone call attempts here in the last 3-4 days. So they're trying.
Okay. Once you have that document, we can talk offline. Happy to follow up with.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. We're on to the standards working group. Swick-Myers, you got the next three, so you might as well just continue EFG.
All right, I will go ahead and do that. So standards working group met last month. We'll meet again at the tail end of this month. Topics of discussions last time included the status board standard that is up for new business approval today. And then also we went over the alert tone standards. Really got down into some really good conversation about alert tones and why they're necessary, and are they now where we make those alert tones more meaningful when they actually come across. So some guidance is in there about some things that should always get an alert tone, some things that probably don't need a tone, but then also there's some wording in there to still give dispatchers proper discretion to do what they need to do in order to make sure that things are handled appropriately depending on the situation. That was passed to operations. Operations reviewed it and passed it back to us, and that will be on our agenda for our meeting at the end of the month to go over that again and the suggested changes. I'll take any questions on the standards at this point. Okay, and if there are none, I can move on to the control station update. We had a good run of test calls last month. I think we had 3 PSAPs that were able to successfully answer the call. As we've been doing these, we've also been verifying within our records of whether or not we have a PSAP that completed the test call and a confirmed date and time as well. So this month, on the 15th, we have some PSAPs coming up. There are 7 of them. Adams County, Taylor County, Humboldt County, Cedar, Clark, Dubuque, and Owine PD are on the list for the test calls this month. We are expecting a few of those to be knocked off the list as well. So a couple of them don't quite have it installed yet because of waiting for parts from their manufacturer, but we should be winding this thing down pretty quickly. The plan is to reach out to those, again, that have not yet been able to complete the test call to see if there's anything we can assist them with. But looking at the list here, there's a couple that are going to be ready to go because of other projects within the next couple of weeks. So we're expecting that list to get really, really small, hopefully less than 5 after this next round of test calls. We continue to offer training on these as well. COVID slowed that down a little bit because of locked doors, but things are starting to open back up. We have been offering these training sessions virtually in the meantime. We've shown that they can work, and now we can also do them in person again in certain cases. So we'll be running that back up here very shortly. I just had a discussion with a local PSAP that's interested in some training coming up in the next couple of weeks. That's the report on the control stations. I'll go ahead and take any questions. Okay, and if there are none, we'll move on to kind of close out the shared system study group. Apologize for getting ahead of myself before. In addition to having Scott Wright from Connecticut last month talk about their attempt at an integration between Moto and Harris that they're still working on, this month we will have P25 standards representatives come in from Motorola and Harris to discuss kind of some of the core essentials about what actually is passed through an ISSI with respect to P25 standards, differences in implementation between the 2 manufacturers, and that possibly being some of the root causes of the issues that other agencies have encountered with this. That is scheduled for June 30th, and I believe that's at 1 o'clock, and we're expecting it to go about an hour and a half. So from that list that we have from the Shared System Study Group presentation, so far with our meetings, we've been able to knock off about 60 to 70% of the minimum objectives from Chair Lampe's presentation in September. My hope is that we can have a finalized work product coming up within the next 4 or 5 months. We are looking to try to see if we can get any good examples of situations that may be like us. State of Connecticut, New York MTA was one of them, but we're still working on trying to find some others where you've got, you know, Motorola and a Harris system, both being P25 phase 2 and in some cases mixed phase. And then what their desired implementation was and what the actual outcomes consisted of. So that's where the Shared System Study Group stands as of today. I'll go ahead and take any questions.
Are you getting good attendance at those?
The attendance so far, the first meeting was really well attended. The second meeting we had about 50 to 60%. Of course, the second meeting was virtual. It was at the height of COVID, and things were not yet opened up. My hope is that with this next meeting, we may have some better attendance now that some things are calming down. We'll just have to wait and see. But we are keeping track of who is attending.
Okay. All right, there is no old business. We'll move on to new business. We're back to Chair Buffington on the users' applications.
All right, thank you. The 5 on the agenda have been reviewed, considered, and approved for recommendation for approval to the full board. Bremer County Emergency Management Level 1, Calhoun County Emergency Management updated to Level 2, Clark County Sheriff's Office to Level 1, Muscatine County updated to Level 2, Winneshiek County Emergency Management Level 1. If no one has a conflict, I would make a motion from the UGC to approve all 5 of these applications.
Okay, we have a motion from Chair Buffington to approve Bramer, Calhoun, Clark, Muscatine, Winneshiek as listed on the agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Peter will second that. Is there further discussion? Holly, would you please take a roll call?
Yes, I will. Patrick Updike,
Aye.
Peter Huffman,
Aye.
Cindy Height.
Aye.
Tom Lampy.
Aye.
Blake DeRushi,
Aye.
Wendy Hess,
Aye.
Andy Buffington,
Aye.
Michelle Bischoff,
Aye.
David Ness,
Aye.
and Rob Rutter. Rob? Did we lose Rob?
I think we may have. We still have.
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
It was an aye.
Okay.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you. On to section B, the new Isicsb standards approval, governance, Chair Huffman.
Okay. This is for the status board standard to help establish guidelines for the status board application. The status board application maintained by the Isicsb board and the Department of Public Safety is a statewide web-based tool for dispatchers accessible through the internet. It is intended to help coordinate use of interoperable communications resources that are available for urgent, emergent, or pre-planned events. I'd like to make a motion for the board to vote on approving this standard.
Has everybody had a chance to look at it before we make any comments on it's on the screen? You can't see it. Okay, hearing none, let's, we have a motion by Peter to approve this standard. Do a second.
Bischoff will second.
Bischoff. Is any further discussion? Holly, take a roll call, please.
Patrick Updike,
Aye.
Peter Huffman,
Aye.
Cindy Height,
Aye.
Tom Lampy.
Aye.
Blake DeRushi,
Aye.
Wendy Hess,
Aye.
Andy Buffington,
Aye.
Michelle Bischoff,
Aye.
David Ness,
Aye.
and Rob Rutter.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to C, Subregional Interoperability Talk Groups Pilot Proposal, Operations Chair Bischoff.
Hey, Michelle, this is Chris. I just made you a presenter. So.
Yep, I am working to, there we go. Can everyone see the, because I see my presentation. So does everyone else see the presentation?
I see it.
Okay, very well, thank you. All right. So what I am presenting to the board is different than most things that come before the board. I am asking the board for concurrence to move forward with the draft standard, and I was corrected. It's not a policy, it's a standard. With context coming from the Des Moines Communications Center of a request so that the review and pilot can move forward together. The reason that I'm asking for this to come kind of a-standardly is that we want to ensure that all the moving parts are correct with context to keep, because there are so many different players with this standard, we want to ensure that everything is well thought out, everyone's needs are met, that the form that we present gathers the correct information, and that it is easy for someone on the other end, so the people who would be filling these forms out, or this form out, that it's easily understood for them. Largely, we're taking some lessons learned from the user group committee and some of the fits and starts that we went through with the Isicsb application process, and wanting to try to iron some of those things out that we learned with that process before we would adopt a policy and a form. But prior to doing that, want some concurrence from the board that there is support for sub-regional talk groups. This item has been discussed at the board level previously and was asked to be put on hold. So wanting to bring it forward because it is coming from the operations committee, from user feedback, to have a mechanism in which to look at something sub-regionally. So policy highlights, you were all sent a copy of it, but just highlighting it. It does require adherence to current and future standards and policies that Isicsb would create. The policy does also have it be Isicsb user driven, so there would be nothing automatic or because we did this, now we have to do that. In regards to sub-regional, it's all user driven, use case driven. The user group's responsibility is load analysis and to contribute with the RICs and helping to evaluate the validity of the request. Technology's role is if the request is adding any additional devices to the network, that technology would be included to evaluate the impact of requested devices to the network that we have, really keeping that security and reliability of the network in mind. Operations is to evaluate the use case and the solution fit of what's being proposed versus what other ways might be available to meet the end user's need. And then governance role in the policy is to ensure that the policy is included, policy inclusion of sub-regional talk groups for future documents that are created and existing policies as they're reviewed to ensure that they're appropriate for the sub-regional talk groups as well. The outcome of this policy is that the end user's request is fulfilled in some manner. So all requests will be reviewed, a recommendation will be made, and will likely fall into one of three categories: that the talk groups will be state managed, the talk groups will be locally managed, or an alternative will be presented back to the requesting agencies as a means in which for their solution, or for their need to be fulfilled. So really the crux of this is getting the end user's need fulfilled. I guess before I move into the request overview, are there any questions on the policy up to this point? Okay.
Michelle,
regarding yep.
Can you hear me? So
absolutely.
In the documents for the board meeting, you have the policy as a draft, and it's called a pilot policy.
Correct.
You've never done a pilot policy before.
Correct.
I'm having trouble understanding why we put a policy in front of a pilot. Don't you usually do a pilot test first on some concept and then develop a policy around what you found out?
The reason that we thought this was a good idea is that because the item had been brought before the board previously, and the feedback was to wait, was to bring it before the board again, because if the notion of sub-regional talk groups was a non-starter for the board at this time, then this policy would, no further development, no pilot would move forward. But this is coming from users requesting sub-regional. So we wanted to listen to our users, present something back to the board, but we knew that this wasn't something new. It was something that had already previously been before the board and asked to hold. So that's why it's coming before the board in this fashion, and why I'm doing a presentation on it, because you're absolutely correct. This is different than anything else we've done up to this point, but we think it's a viable way in which to move the notion of sub-regional talk groups forward in a methodical, thoughtful, and transparent way.
Okay.
Does that address your question?
Yeah, it does. Did it go through the standards working group policy, or develop it?
No, the development of this came out of operations.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Any other questions on the policy itself before I go into the request overview?
At the beginning, did you say it was a standard and not a policy? Or was that the other way?
That it is a standard. That it is a standard, yes.
Okay.
That's, I guess, for me, the definition was I didn't realize that there was a distinction. I saw them as, synonyms. But Chair Updike presented me with a conversation, and I think it falls much more into the standards, how we deal with things, as opposed to thou shalt regarding the policy.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just sometimes the terms are used interchangeably, and I was just making sure I understood.
Sure. So the request that's before you is not for a decision, but rather to provide an example context for the policy as to how it might roll out. I wanted to present the request because that is what is going to be given to the operations, if we decide to move forward, of course, what will be given to operations and the user group committee to review, to evaluate the validity of the request, and is this the best solution to meet the end user's needs. So just briefly, who is a part of this request are the three Polk County Communication Centers that work with local municipalities. What is being requested are 9 talk groups to mirror the regional talk groups. When is this desired? As soon as possible. We happen to be in a window of time where all 3 PSAPs have to touch the radios for various reasons of all agencies. So it's a kind of a lining of the planets that we could possibly get this done during this maintenance window. Why is this being sought? Is because we want to ensure that the broadcasts made over call are relevant to those that are hearing it, and the adequate availability of talk groups. And there's a whole several page use case described in the request. Where is this being requested for is the West Des Moines simulcast cell. And how will this be achieved is through the I missed a policy, through the sub-regional interoperability talk group standard pilot. So as laid out in the policy, or I'm sorry, the standard, sorry. The the board would have concurrence of the pilot. We would then move to the user group committee, the operations committee, and the technology committee to review the policy, to review the request as to is the correct information being presented. And then we would also review it for the validity of the request. And is this something that will meet the end user need? And is it something that the three groups can move forward with or make a recommendation to move forward with? We'd have a joint meeting then to discuss our findings. A recommendation would be made and implementation plans put forth, and then a report back to the board on with a final policy and outcomes of the pilot process. How well did it work for both the end user as well as all of the members that had a role in making it move forward, from the committees to the system administrators to anyone who had a reason to interact with the creation of these sub-regional talk groups, if that is in fact what happens. So it would be complete, transparent, adjustments have been made, and you would see all of that work and lessons learned through the pilot to ensure that we have the best possible policy coming back before the board for adoption. So with that, I'd entertain any questions, and I guess let's just deal with the questions first.
Before I forget, Michelle, because my memory is bad after I get older, but so yeah. You're asking there's a lot of information there for some board members that probably doesn't know exactly how radio systems work, but you're asking the board to approve a concept of sub-regional talk groups, and then you're going to go back and decide how you're going to do that, get the pilot, and how you're going to do the pilot, and then you're going to bring it back to the board to approve the pilot? Because we haven't seen what the pilot's going to look like yet. So I'm confused as to what you're asking the board to do today. And I know we talked, but I'm still not clear on what the board's mission today is. Is it the approval of the concept? Do we need these to give you permission to go see if we need these? Or is it your intent today to approve a pilot and to move forward because we haven't seen the pilot and how it's going to work yet?
It is my intent to, I guess the coming in, the intent is that we would move forward with a pilot of the policy as written and see it through to implementation and gather feedback and policy adjustments along the way.
Michelle, this is Pat.
Yep.
I see that we've got the standards document in our agenda items. I guess I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Why not just adopt the standard part and then go work on the policy as you need? Because if they're going to adopt the standards, isn't that kind of a go-ahead to do the policy side of it? You already know what you want to do. That makes sense?
It does. I'm not sure, and maybe that's part of the development and part of the fact finding of what policy wise would need to change because of sub-regionals. And I think that would work.
Well, I'm not trying to railroad your efforts here. I'm just
no. I'm not taking it as such. I'm pondering. But I think that would work.
I would think that would make it easier for everyone else, but then I could be wrong about that. But if you just ask to get the standards adopted, then you can move forward with whatever policy you want to draft.
Patrick, this is Dave. I'm still struggling a little bit with the policy versus the standard versus the pilot, even though I've been in many conversations about it. I wonder if we could allow Michelle to continue with her presentation. Maybe it'll answer more of Tom's questions about what is the pilot actually going to consist of, and then we could kind of circle back as a group at the end and say, okay, now we better understand what is being asked and what it would look like. What is the best method to allow this pilot / trial / standard, whatever we want to call it? What's the best, or what method is or terminology is the board comfortable calling it to proceed? Would that be wise?
At the end of the day, that is what I'm seeking, is a board go ahead in whatever form that needs to come in. And agreed, there's some language murkiness as to policy, standard, pilot, but I felt it was important to have board input because this item had been before the board previously.
Well, my experience has always been that if you're going to have a policy, you draft the policy and then you put it out for 30-day comment, and then you bring it back to the board after the 30-day comment period, assuming that there's no issues with that, and then you have to vote on that again. Where with the standard, you're coming up with the wording for your standard, and then you ask the board to approve that. So maybe I'm totally wrong in saying all that. I guess I would entertain some other comments regarding that, but that's my perception of the two words.
Well, I think we need to ensure that all the board members have read Michelle's attachment, not this presentation, but her attachment for the need. And maybe you need to go through that with everybody, Michelle, to describe why you're here and what's the need and the history of why we need this, these sub-regionals, a pilot.
Okay. I would prefer to keep it more general in concept than to talk specifics.
Maybe a little history with the board members, a history of a timeline of what brought us to this topic for some of the board members.
And I'm not sure I know the entire timeline. So if someone knows it better than I, but about 2 years ago or so, during the public comment period, I believe, Westcom brought forward a proposal, a letter, if I'm not mistaken, to have the board consider if there was a mechanism in which to have sub-regional talk groups. And at that time, the board decided, hey, we're still trying to build this thing. Let's not start redecorating before we even have the house built. That was my impression of the board's action. I was not a part of the board at that time. I guess let's just pause there for a moment, because I like I said, it was before I was a member of the board. Is that an accurate depiction of history?
I don't know if it's been 2 years. I don't know if it's been that long.
18 months, 2 years, somewhere.
Yeah.
I haven't looked. I didn't go back and look it up. I was just going by memory.
I do kind of remember. I've made a lot of comments when we talked about encryption. They want encryption. They want to do 3 encryption channels. And I think this was on the same premise of, can we drive the car a little bit before we start adding stuff to it? Yeah, I kind of remember. The position.
This is Andy.
At that time.
Yeah, this was brought before the user group committee from Westcom originally, and it was around that 2 years ago. And Michelle is absolutely correct. It was hey, let's get this thing built before we start doing it. But the user group committee, I think in its entirety, did see the benefit and the relevance of being able to have the users in certain locations be able to build and utilize this sub-regional talk group. It made a lot of sense to all of us at the time. I appreciate the idea that this is a pilot. And I don't want, my opinion is that, and I appreciate Patrick's comments, but I really don't want to go in and say, let's approve a standard today and then go back and fix it later through policy. I think I would be more comfortable with granting the request from operations to say, hey, move forward with this. Let's get it out there. Let's workshop it through operations, user group committee, the technical committee, socialize it through that so we have something a little bit more concrete to bring in front of the board. Then we can do our 30 days. Then we can do our vote. That might take a little bit longer than what we're hoping for, or that what Des Moines is hoping for. But at the end of the day, let's let our largest user, the Metro, kick the tires on this once we kind of get the idea of what they're wanting to do specifically, and then let's have them test it, use it as a pilot, so that as areas of the state say, hey, this has a lot of relevance and a lot of value, let's move forward and do this for ourselves. We have a path.
Thank you, Andy.
Maybe to paraphrase a little bit, what we're looking at is there was a group who wanted to do a pilot. And so to build structure and put some rules around how that will function, we've got this pilot standard formed. And what we're asking for is to approve the standard that puts structure and form and rules around what the pilot is going to look like. Is that what I'm understanding?
That is accurate.
Okay. So during that, so when we're researching this, I'm taking, this isn't a done deal today. We're researching, we're just giving, the board's just saying, hey, yeah, go ahead and keep looking at what you're going to do, get something started on the possibility of using sub-regional talk groups in all 6 regions of the state. Because is that your intent, that everybody's going to benefit from this, or is it just the Metro Des Moines?
No, that is, there is, the intent here is that that policy standard, whatever we're going to call it, that the rules would be the rules, and those are applicable to all Isics users. So if any Isic user had a use case that they thought sub-regional talk groups would be the solution for, that they could follow this process, and there would be a playbook, if you will, as to how does the board deal with that type of request, what hurdles need to be cleared, what information needs to be gathered, what decisions need to be made, that all of that would be documented and gathered in a succinct, clear, easily understood process that would fulfill everyone's need, from end user to the sysadmins that have to make it all happen in the end.
Okay.
So it absolutely would be available to all.
But I think that's an important distinction and reason for the pilot request, Tom, is that it's a little difficult at this early stage to envision or to build something that works for everywhere. So let's try where we have 3 willing participants that know this may or may not work. We've done a lot of due diligence. We think it'll work, but let us try, and the policy will ultimately come back to the board for approval, but it'll be honed, it'll be improved, and it will be scalable. Whatever comes out of Isics needs to be eligible for users across the state. But to try to guess what is going to work, whether Waterloo area has any desire, or Carroll County, or anywhere else, we have a known need here locally. We want to pilot or try something. And then this will allow us to have the best policy developed for consideration for the board. And then others would be able to add on later, going through the process that's tentatively been identified, but it could be tweaked. That's it for me.
Okay, I would ask that you said 3 comm centers. Are you inviting the State Patrol comm center involved in
Yes.
all of this?
Absolutely. The reason that the State Patrol is not on the application was that when this application was developed, they weren't a part of the development of the application. But there's no it's not purposeful exclusion.
No, I just want to make sure that I know Heath Ho, I know Sergeant Ho is in your metro meetings. So that no worries there. The second thing, I just want to make sure that you look at the end user in regards to the radio they use on their hips, because what I did see in that one in your other presentation or your document, that you would be creating a new zone. For instance, in this area, it would be 77 zone. And don't get me wrong, now that I'm more clear on what you want to do here, yeah, we need, you can get it. I'm in for getting it started, but what I want to make sure that as we look at the end user with the radio on your hip, if you create a new zone and you are in fact going to do it across all 6, some of the unintended consequences are, if you put a new zone in your radio, that means you only got 16 clicks in a radio. So if you're going to use all 9 of your if you want 9 more talk groups, you will have to put another zone in your radio, because a lot of the radios are already assuming everybody has programmed what they're supposed to in the regions today for region 1, all 9 of those. So one alternative could be to just add 3 more to your pilot to region 1, just 3, and that way you won't have to worry about any more. You can still put that in that same zone that they already have it in, rather than creating a new zone. Because let's just take State Patrol for example. We have 16 clicks. Most radios do. And we have that region 1 zone in there. We would have to create a Polk County zone again with all 9 of those in there. And it's already, we're trying to get it. I mean, it's trainable, but it's, we're driving the car too, and we're sometimes putting it in the ditch. We still have troopers. We have trouble getting to where they're supposed to be. So that's all I ask is, when you research that pilot, take into account all those unintended consequences of the radio user coming into the metro, and people that work, and the agencies that don't just work here. They travel, like DOT, DNR, and DPS agents, federal agents, ATF, like we had during the unrest here, which worked beautifully. And if you're still on the phone here, I want to give you a compliment on how well oiled machine you were during those handling all that dispatch when we patched TAC 12 into your TAC on your Des Moines system. It worked flawlessly. It was crystal clear. You did a tremendous job of organization on that.
Thank you. I appreciate the compliment.
Hey, Michelle, this is Chris.
Yep.
The one thing I do want to mention to those in the meeting here too is that some of those questions on how, in theory, an outside agency could be handled if they came into an area where, say, sub-regional talk groups were in use, how that would be handled if they did not have those sub-regional talk groups in their radios. There was discussions of say, a patch into an existing regional to help ameliorate some of that. And then there were also some other discussions about processes with respect to calls and things like that. So a lot of these things have been discussed within some levels of the operations committee already. And they may not be reflected in the document, but the one thing that is in that standard that Chair Bischoff has brought forth is that nothing that they do in the subregions can be in conflict with anything else that's already adopted standards. So I think there's a good level of initial assurances there that things will be followed, and even if someone does not have those talk groups, there's ways to discuss and remedy some of those potential pitfalls and unintended consequences. It's just going to take a little bit of discussion.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, this is Andy Buffington. Would it be germane to make a motion of concurrence with the Operations Committee to move forward with the development of the sub-regional talk group pilot concept?
I would entertain that motion.
I'll second it. Updike.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And is that your official motion, or are you asking Michelle?
Oh, that is my official motion.
Okay, so we do have a second with Patrick. Is there any further discussion on it? Okay, Holly, you want to take a roll call, please?
Okay, Patrick Updike,
Aye.
Peter Huffman,
Aye.
Cindy Hike,
Aye.
Tom Lampy.
Aye.
Blake Zerushi,
Aye.
Wendy Hess,
Aye.
Andy Buffington,
Aye.
Michelle Bischoff,
Aye.
David Neff,
Aye.
Rob Rotter,
Aye.
and I think Angela is on now. Angela, are you on?
I am.
Okay. Angela
Aye.
Potter. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Okay, motion passes. Michelle, great job on, there's a lot of work you did, obviously, with all this documentation you've provided us, which is sometimes smothering to some and not much to others. So, but good job.
I appreciate your considerations. Thank you. And look forward to the continued conversation.
Okay. All right. Well, we're open for public comment. And if anybody would like, that's on the phone or go to meeting today, would like to address the board, it is open for you now. Okay, I think that was plenty of time to get people off of mute. By hearing none, I'm going to ask for an adjournment.
So moved.
Hey.
Or I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next month.
Thank you very much.